Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. On April 2nd, 2025, President Donald Trump stood in the White House Rose Garden holding a chart. The day was branded Liberation Day. Country after country appeared on the board: China, Vietnam, the European Union, Japan, India, Thailand, dozens more. Next to each country was what the administration presented as the economic burden that country supposedly imposed upon the United States. China, 67%, European Union, 39%, Vietnam, 90%. And beside those numbers appeared America's response, a new system of supposedly reciprocal tariffs. The political message was simple: foreign countries had been cheating America for decades. But underneath the dramatic presentation was a fundamental problem. The administration had not actually measured how much each country was charging American products. Instead, the calculation was largely based on something much simpler: America's bilateral goods trade deficit with each country. If we imported more than we exported, the formula saw it as cheating. Less than 11 months later, the Supreme Court ruled that the president did not have the authority to impose those tariffs. The government had already collected approximately $166 billion. And then the American government had to return roughly $166 billion to the companies that had paid them. The policy designed to make foreign countries pay ended as one of the largest refunds in history. To understand how that happened, we have to begin with the economic assumption at the center of Liberation Day: the belief that a bilateral trade deficit is something another country has done to you. The April 2025 executive order declared that large goods trade deficits represented an unusual threat. It linked them to foreign tariffs, suppressed wages, and industrial subsidies. But the methodology made an enormous logical jump. It assumed that the outcome, a bilateral goods deficit, could serve as a proxy for the cause: unfair foreign trade policy. Those are not the same thing. Imagine an American company that buys $10 million in chips from Taiwan but sells only $1 million in software. Does that prove Taiwan is cheating? Not necessarily. Maybe they just specialize in chips. The formula looked complicated, featuring Greek letters for elasticity and pass-through, but once the parameters were set, it reduced to something surprisingly simple. US tier set import demand elasticity at 4 and pass-through at 0.25. 4 times 0.25 equals 1. The calculation became the trade deficit with a country divided by imports from that country. Take China. Exports were 144 billion, imports were 439 billion. The $295 billion deficit divided by imports gave roughly 67%. That became the White House's estimate of China's hidden barriers. Calling these rates reciprocal was misleading. A genuine reciprocal tariff means you charge 20%, so we charge 20%. Liberation Day instead said, we buy more than you, so we'll invent a hidden barrier. Consider your own life. You probably run a trade deficit with your grocery store. You buy thousands of dollars of food. The store buys nothing from you. Should you impose a tariff on your groceries? Of course not. You earn income somewhere else. The entire economy balances through a network of transactions, not through equal exchange between every pair of participants. Countries operate the same way. Global supply chains make bilateral numbers even less meaningful. A smartphone labeled as an import from China may contain components from Korea, Taiwan, and America. The final assembly country gets the full statistical credit. There was another distortion. The formula focused primarily on goods, but America is extraordinarily competitive in services, from finance and software to intellectual property and education. In 2024, America ran a services surplus of nearly $294 billion. Ignoring this is like evaluating Apple by its hardware costs while ignoring its software sales. It gives a distorted picture of the economy. The deepest problem was conceptual. A country's external balance is fundamentally tied to the relationship between national saving and domestic investment. Tariffs don't directly solve that imbalance. When Americans consume and invest more than the country saves, the difference is financed by foreign capital. Federal budget deficits, household saving, and the dollar's reserve role are the real drivers. Politically, tariffs are described as charging China. That sounds as though Beijing gets an invoice. It does not. The tariff is legally collected from the American importer at our own customs docks. Research from the 2018 tariffs showed that foreign exporters didn't lower prices. In 2025, the NY Fed estimated that about 94% of the burden was borne by American firms and consumers. Some businesses absorbed the expense, others raised prices, some closed product lines. While foreign countries lost export volume, the Treasury revenue itself came overwhelmingly from inside the American system. None of this means tariffs are always irrational. A country may decide certain industries like semiconductors or batteries are strategically essential even if they cost more to build domestically. Trade enforcement works best when it targets specific problems, subsidies for EVs or discriminatory regulations. But Liberation Day asked a different question. Why did we buy more than you? That's a flawed metric. The formula effectively punished countries for specializing. Vietnam exported furniture and electronics that Americans wanted. Because they were successful, the formula interpreted their success as evidence of a hidden barrier. The shock was immediate. The budget lab at Yale estimated the April measures alone would raise the U.S. price level by 1.3%, reducing household purchasing power by about $2,100. Volatility created uncertainty. Companies shifted suppliers not because they were more efficient, but because trade policy changed the arithmetic. The global economy reorganized around the policy itself. The economic methodology was controversial, but the legal foundation proved fatal. The Constitution gives Congress the power to impose duties. The President's authority is delegated through specific statutes. The administration relied on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. While presidents use it for sanctions and asset freezes, none had used it for a global tariff system of this scale. On February 20, 2026, the Supreme Court rejected this in a 6-3 vote. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that IEEPA did not silently transfer Congress's vast taxing power to the President. The emergency had limits. With the tariffs invalidated, customs had to return the money. They created the CAPE system to process millions of entries. By July 2026, $128 billion in claims had already been accepted. But here is an irony. The refund goes to the importer, not the consumer. If a retailer raised prices by $200 to cover the tariff, they get the refund, but the consumer doesn't automatically get their money back. And then there is China, the primary target. Invalidation meant Washington returning billions of dollars connected to Chinese imports. While identity competition remained, the symbolic outcome was remarkable. The defeat didn't end the agenda, it changed the laws. The administration turned to Section 301, launching investigations into forced labor to rebuild tariffs through the proper congressional framework. Was it a failure? It created leverage and encouraged supply chain shifts. But it failed to prove trade deficits are cheating, and it resulted in a historic $166 billion legal liability. The Liberation Day story is an example of what happens when economic nationalism moves faster than diagnosis. A complicated global system was reduced to a simple equation: exports minus imports. A tariff is a tool, and a tool cannot rescue a mistaken diagnosis. If the problem is national saving or strategic capacity, border taxes alone are rarely the whole answer. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'll see you in the next one.